Okay, let's take a look at the next in our NRECA review videos. I'm going to take a look at a couple of things here. Um, I'm going to do some what's called Spacebar Distribution. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go out and get some images. I'm going to go under File to Place. And I'm going to go to my NRECA folder here, and I'm just going to pick up a few images here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I was holding my shift key down and I click open. Just as a reminder, if you start to press and drag, you can hit the up arrow to add rows and you can hit the right arrow to add columns. So let's say I want to have 3 columns and this many images, and I'm going to make them look like this, and they're all going to pop in there. So basically you load the gun, you start to drag and keep the mouse button down. You change the rows and columns based upon what you want from the arrow keys. Now the question is, how can I redistribute the space between these? So I can reselect these by dragging a marquee around them. Then I'm going to go over this lower right corner and I'm going to press and hold, and I see a little tooltip come up on the width and height. When I see that come up after holding down the mouse button, I'm not letting up, I'm going to hold the space bar. And as I hold the space bar, you actually can drag these around and control kind of how they're spaced and distributed here. So just know, if you want to, you can use the space bar afterwards, maybe to change the kind of the distribution of the selected frames in this case. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to go over, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about the story editor for a second. So if I come over here to the story editor, it's just a nice way to look at some text I might have on my document. So I'm going to drag out a text frame here. I'm going to load it up with some default type. And you know, if I take my black arrow and click on the frame here, that I can actually rescale this frame down, and it's going to give me the overset text warning. So let's pretend I flowed this text in, I used a place command, and I get an overset text warning. Now, how can I see what text is not being seen? One of the easiest ways is just to go to the edit menu and go over to edit in Story Editor. Resize this window so you can see it a little bit better. Move it down so it's not confusing. And it's going to go ahead and show me all the text that's in that story, and over here something called overset. So everything plus this area forward is telling me this is not being seen. So this is a nice way to see how much overset text you have. In addition to that area, you can type in here, you can edit, you can spell check the story you're working with. But I'm using it here as a means of being able to see how much overset text I have. So don't forget those other attributes of being able to type in here and edit in here, change your attributes and all this. But the key thing is, one, to see if you have overset type, how much of the type is overset. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go to another topic. We showed create outlines of type. I'm going to draw out a little frame here I'm going to use as a headline here, and I'm going to type in some letters here, and I'm going to type in all caps, and I'm going to type in birdie, and I'm going to highlight birdie, and I'm going to go shift control greater than or less than. Not sure why that's cooking like that, but let's go ahead and bump up the size of the type from the keyboard. And I'm going to change my font over here to a relatively heavy, thick font, Impact, and I'm going to use Impact. So now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to double click on this handle in the corner to reset the frame. I'm going to hold on my Shift and Command or Shift and Control keys, and I'm going to make this bigger. and that just makes the contents and the frame bigger. Shift Command drag or Shift Control drag. So I'm going to turn this into a frame. I'm going to turn these shapes into a frame and put a picture in here. So the first thing I do is I have it selected. I'm going to go under Type, and I'm going to pick the command called Create Outlines. It doesn't look like much has changed, but it's turned it into artwork. If I click on my Direct Select tool and zoom in here a little bit so you can see this, see, there's anchor points and paths here. So once it's turned into what we'll call outlines, I can actually go back and manipulate the paths and change the shape of these characters. Now remember, they're not editable anymore. Undo, undo. They are strictly pieces of artwork as if you had drawn it from scratch. So when I pick it, it selects all these outlines of these type shapes, and I can put a picture in there. I'm going to go File, Place. I'm going to go over here to my NREAC folder. I'm going to look here a little bit here. I'm going to try to find a picture. Let's say January, what challenge picks? And I'll pick a challenge picks here. How about this one? And I'll double click and I'll put this inside of here. Now I'm going to ask it to go fitting, fill the frame, and there you go. A beautiful looking piece of type that's actually been turned to outlines, and now it's being treated like a frame. So I can manipulate this photo in here, and it looks great. Looks great. I can go over to my effects panel on the far right. I can click here. I can go to FX. I can add a good old-fashioned drop shadow. I can add something like inner shadow. I can really make this look, pretty gaudy. And I'll click OK, click off, go over here to my menu and change it to preview. There you go. So that's how you turn type into outlines. Remember now, once it's turned into outlines, you cannot go back. So make sure you got the right font, the right style, the right letters, the right word, because you won't be able to edit that. So that's just a means of creating outlines in InDesign.